Hello, everyone, and inside today's Locked On Canadiens, the post-mortem has begun.
Your Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of Locked On Canadiens. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, and remember to make every moment more right now because new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's right, $150 win or lose. Visit FanDuel.com/locked-on to get started. I am your host for today and tomorrow, and I believe Tuesday. So 3 episodes this week. You will have me here, myself, and I'm, of course, Scott Matla at Scott Matla on the app formerly known as Twitter. My co-host is out of town. She is traveling to, I believe, Toronto at some point this week. Obviously, we got reunited at the end of last week for our live kind of pre-playoff post-mortem that we did. We did a live show on Saturday afternoon just before the evening games fully got kicked off there. And today, just want to take a moment. I'm now at a couple of days to sit and think, where are we at this season with the Montreal Canadiens? So we're going to talk Kent Hughes' offseason checklist. We're going to talk about the expectations for next year. And we're going to wrap the show with a postmortem for the Laval Rocket, who finished up their season on Saturday night. All of that's going to be in here. And I guess the biggest thing is here, and I want to go pop in here because I want to take a look at cap friendly because contract status is always super, super important here. And we're looking at Kent Hughes' off-season checklist to start this show here. The Canadiens lost to Detroit in back-to-back games, once in overtime, once in a shootout. Didn't matter. They are currently, I believe, locked in or hold. I shouldn't say locked into because they're not locked into anything until the draft lottery. They hold the 5th best odds for the first overall pick or a lottery pick right now, according to Tankathon, which is good. The Canadiens, I thought, played very well down the stretch. And I look at the jump from the bottom half of these teams here. San Jose, sorry, JD, love you, 47 points. Chicago, 52. Anaheim, 59. Columbus, 66. Then there is a 10-point jump there. The Canadiens are sitting at 76 points. Arizona, 77. Ottawa, whose rebuild finished, 78. Then Seattle, Calgary, New Jersey, all at 81. Buffalo at 84. Philly at 87. Minnesota at 87. Pittsburgh's pick going to Detroit, 88. Or going to San Jose, my apologies. Detroit, 91. St. Louis, 92. And then the playoff team started with Washington at 91 points. We're going to talk playoffs in the next segment here, but there was very clearly a gap between the truly bad. I'm going to put an asterisk on Columbus because the amount of injuries that team went through this year absolutely blows my mind, which Montreal somehow suffered. Only a little bit of that. Fake Kirby Dach was the big one for that. But Chicago, we knew was going to be bad. San Jose, we knew was going to be bad. Anaheim is kind of where the Canadiens were last year and the year before that, and that they are in this selling off, doing what they can to get pieces here. So if I'm Kent Hughes, I guess my biggest thing right now is I'm looking at 2 lanes of thought here. Do you start working on extensions for some of your young, soon-to-be RFAs or going to be RFAs this offseason, or do you go full bore into the draft here? And from a perspective of someone who likes to see these contract things done early and taken care of, I'm going to run down who the Canadiens have hitting free agency this offseason that I think that were played games or were part of this team here. Tanner Pearson's going to UFA, not coming back. Don't worry about it. Jesse Ylönen is an RFA with arbitration rights. I would not be surprised that seeing that go to arbitration as well. Arbor Xhekaj is a restricted free agent. That's going to be a very, very interesting contract negotiation. Because he's going to be coming off his entry-level deal, 23. Another season ended a little bit early because of a shoulder injury that he apparently hid from the Canadiens here. He's probably leading the way as your biggest potential name to get re-signed. And then going into also into next year, I believe Juraj Slafkovsky is also eligible for a extension after July 1st, I believe, because he's down to 1 year on his contract. Same with Raphael Harvey-Pinard. Michael Pezzetta will be UFA in 2 years. Jake Evans, UFA in 2 years. Dvorak and Armia as well. On the defensive side of things, David Savard will be UFA in 2 years. Jordan Harris is RFA with arbitration rights in 2025. Caden Gooley, who is the other one that was mentioned by Elliot Friedman as being one of those names that Kent Hughes would like to get done. Kovacevic is UFA. Primo's a couple years out. On injured reserve, Chris Weidman is an unrestricted free agent this offseason. Not sure if he's fully retired or not. There was a weird thing around that. Going into the Rocket now, you have Philip Cederquist, who is an RFA with arbitration rights. He's likely bound for, I believe he was going back to Europe. That was the talk when he was signed originally. Philippe Maillet, UFA, going to be a big loss for the Rocket. Mitchell Stevens, up in the air, UFA. Elias Anderson, RFA with arbitration rights. Would be very interested to see what becomes of him. And Arnaud Durando is also a UFA heading into this offseason as well. On defense, Justin Barron is an RFA. Matthias Norlinder, RFA with arbitration rights. Brady Keeper, unrestricted free agent. I think there's a couple of big contracts that Kent Hughes has to focus on here above anything else. You have Slavkovsky's potential extension after July 1st, and then Jack-I and Barron are the ones that I'm looking at and going, what are you going to do with these players? I also think a lot of this, we're going to get a flurry of things right after the draft. You're going to see re-signed, a bunch of things in order here. And I think they're going to be focusing on this draft because right now the Canadiens own the 5th and the 27th pick, thanks to the Sean Monahan trade, and also pick number 58 that they got from Colorado, I believe it was either the Newhook or the Lehkonen deal that they got that trade. I can actually look at that on Cap Friendly. Thank you. The Avs one from March 21st, 2022. So that would have, yeah. So if I'm Kent Hughes, my focus is on getting myself set up, seeing who's not coming back, who would like to go in this offseason, if anyone. And that is if I can shift out some of these contracts. Yoel Armia with one less year on his deal. When he enters next season, that will be the final year of his contract. Same with Christian Dvorak. Same with David Savard. Yoel Armia this season absolutely was everything you would want to see from a big defensive two-way forward. And I think that the way he played close to, I believe he ended up with 16 or 17 goals on the season, is exactly the kind of player that I think a lot of teams would like in their bottom 6. And with 1 year on his deal, the salary cap set to rise next year, going into next season. I believe it was going up to, I believe it was $92 or $93 million. There's an opportunity there for a team that suddenly has the luxury of that cap space. So if I am looking at my list as Kent Hughes right now, I am starting with any of this, CHL scouting. The NCAA season is over. Most of the European seasons are over. We're getting to the championship rounds now. That leaves the CHL in front of you. That means guys like Zane Pareka, Tidge Aginla, Caden Lindstrom out in the WHL, Sam Dickinson, William season's over, Berkeley Catton, etc. These are guys that you can still tune in and watch and see, hey, is this what we want? They're going to get a good look at a bunch of these players here in the Memorial Cup and in these separate CHL leagues right now. And that's a good thing. I think they're going to try and hone in kind of what is our wish window, our wish list here. Then after that is what bodies, what contracts can we move around? And then because they want to start negotiating these extensions for Jack-I, which I don't know what you offer Arbor Jack-I. Do you go longer term and keep the money down? Do you go shorter term, maybe pay him a little bit more? What do they think his ceiling potentially is? And then you have guys going to Worlds as well. You have Nick Suzuki and Montembeau who said, no, thank you. Mike Matheson also turned it down because his wife is set to be having their second child very soon, which is very important. Good for him. Caulfield is suiting up. Yuri Slavkovsky suiting up. We talked about it on the live show. Will Philip Machar join Slovakia? I don't see any reason why he wouldn't. There's opportunities there. And I think if I am looking at Kent Hughes' checklist, The draft is first and foremost. You have a top 5 pick. You have an opportunity to draft somebody who, again, can make a big difference after this season and become one of those pieces when you are transitioning to that next phase of your team here. And then you got to kind of look at what bodies can we move out? Is it Armia? Is it Savard? Is it Dvorak? Is it, God forbid, Josh Anderson? And then getting some of these, I think the post July 1st contracts are lower on that list there because we don't know, hey, who's going to be available? Who's going to be asking for a trade as the NHL playoffs come to a close there? And speaking of that transition, what are the Canadiens next year? Are they going to take that step forward, or are we mired in another year rebuilding? We're going to talk about that coming up next. But first, as I said off the top of the show, today's episode is brought to you by the folks at FanDuel. It's playoff time in the NBA and the NHL. It is the best time to be a hater, and it is the best time for the most chaotic series in any sport anywhere. And FanDuel is your place to bet on every single game because right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets, absolutely guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose. And you can bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that is safe, secure, and easy to use. Can the Bruins continue to bully the Leafs in the playoffs? Is Connor McDavid and Nathan McKinnon going to will the rest of their team through? You can bet on so many things at FanDuel. And with that $150 win or lose, you've got nothing to lose. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/locked on and make your first bet an automatic win with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of us here at Locked On. Today's show is also brought to you by the folks at Policy Genius. Life insurance is important. You don't want to talk about it all the time, but it is something that is so important, not only for yourself, but for your future and your family's future. And it can be so hard to find what is right for you. What is the right fit? It's not an easy thing to navigate. And a lot of people don't want to because they don't want to think about what happens when they are gone. And Policy Genius can help you compare all your options from top companies, and their teams of licensed experts are on hand to help talk you through it. So talk to award-winning agents who walk you through every step of the process, step by step, giving you full peace of mind. So check life insurance off your to-do list in no time with Policy Genius. Just head to policygenius.com/lockedonnhl or click the link in our description to get your free life insurance quote and see how much you could save at policygenius.com/lockedonnhl. We are back here at Locked On Canadiens. We talked about what is on Kent Hughes' offseason checklist, a very kind of brief overview of that. As we get closer and closer to the draft lottery, we'll learn more and more about what has he got up his sleeve. And the big question is, and we talked about this with Ian Boisvert of The Build on our live show on Friday, is what are the expectations for next year? This team has taken tremendous step forwards from the day that Dominique Ducharme was fired to Martin St. Louis being hired to where this team is at now. It has been forward steps for everything. Is the team perfectly good, flawless, maybe just not getting bounces, this or that? No, they are a team that is still flawed in many ways. And as we kind of dig into things in this offseason, we're going to learn, what does this team need to do to get to that next level? I don't think they're far off from that. They were 15 points out of a playoff spot. Yes. They went to overtime or a shootout 16 times, or had 16 shootout or overtime losses this year. So that's, a lot of points missed in there. If they win half of those, you're looking at a team that's on the fringe of the playoff picture right now without a second line center who did this really weird 3-goalie rotation that turned out to be hurting everybody. And the question becomes next year, is this a potential playoff team? And I want to avoid doing what the Buffalo Sabres did, where there was hope there, the glimmer, and then the next year they were that team. They were so close, and then they were expected next year, we're going for it. And then they just didn't have it this year. Yes, Tage Thompson injuries and inconsistencies, growing pains for a young team. And I look at the Canadiens, don't fall into that same trap. Their top line is phenomenal. Slavkovsky, Caulfield, and Suzuki is phenomenal, legitimate NHL top line. That is so crucial to this team going forward. So you leave that line alone. Let's just say we are leaving that line as it is. Next year, Kirby Dach, Alex Newhook, X player. I'm just putting an X there as a placeholder. I'm not deciding on any one person yet. Your next line down, and maybe this is me taking a step forward too far and assuming that someone is gone. Line 3, Jake Evans is your third line center. Brendan Gallagher, Yoel Armia. Honestly, some defensive responsibility, a little bit of pace from Evans, some suddenly very solid depth goal scoring from both wingers in Armia and Gallagher. And then your fourth line, you have Michael Pezzetta for another year. Do you try Owen Beck as your fourth line center, or would you rather have him in the AHL to just sign a guy to be your fourth line center? Do you let Brandon Gignac compete for that? I think you do. You gave him an extension as part of that deal last year. I think you give him that opportunity. And then you have a fourth line wing spot. Xavier Simoneau, Lucas Condata, maybe Florian Jacki or Luke Tuck, depending on how their offseason camp goes. And now you will note here, out of everything involved in this, Scott, there's some names missing on offense. Where did Josh Anderson go? Where did Christian Dvorak go? What about Joshua Wall? What about this? That spot on that second line there, that currently for me is Joshua Wall's spot to lose. I know that his scoring numbers probably aren't as big as we might have expected. He did really well in the AHL, suspension at the end of the year notwithstanding, and more on that in the next segment. But I think the way that he plays and sees the game has earned him that opportunity there. And I think he'll make the absolute most of it. But where's Josh Anderson? Hopefully on another team. I don't want to beat up Josh Anderson too much, and smarter people than I are doing a lot more detailed analysis on what is going on with Josh Anderson here. I don't want to tell anyone, what to do with it, but I think that for this team, and I think just by my eye test alone, every line Josh Anderson was on was markedly worse this year. And not by a little bit, by a lot of it. And as for Christian Dvorak, it's just not working out here. And maybe there's another opportunity for him on another team, a team who needs a bottom six center. He came in, wasn't given a defined role, and basically was thrown out there to suffer for it in the guy that, hey, we lost Jesperi Kotkaniemi due to our own hubris. Here's Christian Dvorak. And maybe next year he comes back healthy and he's that third line center and Evans is on the fourth line. That would be great. I don't have a problem with that. That's a pretty decent spine on your team, just, assuming they can all stay healthy, knock on wood. Defense is where everything gets complicated. And I think that's what I'm going to kind of focus on in tomorrow's episode is I want to take a look at the NHL group, the AHL group, and then who's coming in. There are so many defensemen in this organization that have a pretty good claim to be playing at the NHL level right now. There are, I think, 12 people potentially competing for 7 NHL spots. That's healthy competition. That's good competition. And in net, you have Montembeault and you have Caden Primo. And I feel comfortable enough going into next season with them. So you look at that team and assuming that, hey, if Gallagher and Armia can keep this upward trend going, if that first line can do what they did this year, and if Kirby Dach stays on that second line with Newhook and Joshua Waugh, and they, gel pretty quickly, can this team get, let's say, 17 more points than they got this year? That would put them at 93 points. It's a fringe playoff wildcard team. And I think that's kind of where they might be expected to make that next step. Win some of these games in regulation, maybe get a little bit more finish in overtime, fix the power play. I think this is a team that I don't want to say they're going to make the playoffs next year because I don't think they will. But I think they're going to take that step, and they're going to be that team that last week of the season, for the first time in a long time, is going to play meaningful games down the stretch where every single one matters. And that, I think, is what Kent Hughes and Martin St. Louis, who was extended, He's got another 2 years on his contract. Now he's here for 3 more years starting next year. I think that is their goal. And I think they're doing a really good job at getting into that space there. I'm not going to say they're a playoff team next year, but I'm really thinking they are closer than we expect them to be at this point. We got to change gears a little bit on this, though, because coming up in our final segment, the Laval Rocket season is over, and your expert here is going to give you the rundown. All that and more coming up next. But first, buying tickets to shows, concerts, games can be such a stressful experience. I had to go through it trying to find tickets for a wrestling show here in Buffalo at the end of June. And I got to tell you, take all the guesswork out of it and go with Game Time. It is now the authorized ticket marketplace for Major League Baseball, if you're a big baseball fan like I am, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. And prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch, giving you killer last-minute deals. And you can see the views from your seat, and you get the lowest price guaranteed. They take all the guesswork out of buying tickets. And let me tell you, the best part is when I look at a price on Game Time, that is the price you are paying. You're not going to get those hidden fees. You are not going to get surprised with anything at the end. So when you go to check what the view from your seat looks like and you decide that you want that, you know you're not going to get hit with anything when you go to check out. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Just download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Some terms apply. Again, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. We are back. It is the final segment of today's episode. And for those following me on Twitter, know that Saturday night, 420, just ice it, was the Laval Rockets' last game of the season. They played Friday night against Belleville in Belleville. Were tied. I believe they were losing 2-1. They had to get 2 points. They couldn't allow Belleville to get even a point in that game. They were tied 2-2. They had no choice but to pull the goalie to try and get a late goal. Igor Sokolov scored with 2 seconds left, celebrated like he won something meaningful, which he did, to be fair to Ottawa. Making the playoffs is a tremendous achievement, and eliminated the Rocket from postseason contention on the second to last game of the year. They then lost 2-1 on Saturday night. It was kind of a perfect encapsulation of their season. Strong start. And I mean, just out shooting Belleville over and over and over again. They had twice the shots and were losing 2-1 at one point. And it's frustrating and it's maddening. And there was some frustration throughout the room on that. Toby Paquette-Bisson said, hey, we gave up spots to veterans in this lineup for young guys here, and it didn't help. And yeah, maybe guys like Arnaud Durando or Philip Sederquist in a game where it is very bump and grind kind of, you need experience for that situation. And I also get at the same time, this is a development league where you also want to win, which means you want to play and develop your young guys. Luke Tuck came in. They didn't know if they were going to have Mitchell Stevens playing. He had to play the wing because he couldn't take faceoffs. He wasn't going to miss the game for anything, he said. You had Brandon Gignac, who is out. Xavier Simino had shoulder surgery. Brady Keeper is out. You're missing these guys already. And you have other people banged up. David Reinbacher got hurt in this game, did not play on Saturday because of that. Jaden Struble, minor injury, didn't play. Joshua Waugh didn't play because he elbowed someone in the head and got he served 2 in a penalty and then was suspended for Saturday's game. It's kind of a tough end there in that, yeah, maybe these guys would have been better, but also fresh legs are an important thing here. You have a Belleville team that's been playing like the Rocket. Every game is life or death for over a month. Fresh legs go a long way. And I thought a guy like Luke Tuck looked pretty good. I thought Florian Jacquet he's a project, but I have liked what I've seen in there. On defense, you added Justin Barron back in. You brought Logan Mailloux back in. You brought Jaden Struble back in. You had David Reinbacher here. You had all these bodies. And it sometimes is the team just runs out of gas. They were a young team. Yeah, the top of their lineup is, Philippe Maillet, Brandon Gignac, Mitchell Stevens, Elias Anderson, guys who are a little bit older there. But it's such a hard balance to strike between we need the right vets to bring the best out of the young guys to get them ready for the next level. I go back a couple of years to their deep playoff run. You had an Alex Belzile. You had Brandon Gignac in there. You had Cedric Paquette was on that team, and I believe Mitchell Stevens was also on that team. Older prospects like a Joel Teasdale, Xavier Ouellet was on these teams doing exactly what you want to see from them, and that everything kind of synergized. This year, it felt like this group is clicking, this one is not, this one. It was never kind of synergized down the lineup. Philippe Maillet had a very strong back half of the season. Brandon Gignac had a very strong front half of the season. Mitchell Stevens was kind of in the middle there a little bit. Xavier Simoneau was having a good year, out with injury. This is a team that never got everything clicked into place outside of, like, I want to say it was a month span, basically from the middle to end of December through until like early January, where everything was clicking, and then pieces started to maybe get a little winded, fatigued, tired. It's a team that had a ton of promise, and I still think they do. And I look at the way this season turned out. Joshua Watt turned out to be a legit NHL player, deserved his call up. I look at Brandon Gignac, who got an NHL deal out of everything. Yes, injuries played a part, but that's really important for a guy who worked his ass off for it. Jakub Dobeš became a very good goalie this year for the Rocket. Didn't look at it first, didn't really know what to make of it, and then he turned out just fine. You saw Logan Mailloux named to the AHL All-Rookie team. One of their leading scorers as a rookie defenseman, one of the top scoring defensemen in the AHL. Very strong rookie season. Jaden Struble played a handful of games and then never left the Montreal Canadiens roster, outside of being sent down for like waivers at the end of the season and stuff. And you know what? That's important. This is a team that got these guys ready, that when they needed to go to the NHL level, took the step that they needed and were able to seamlessly integrate into Martin St. Louis' offense. Joshua Watt didn't look like he lost a step. Jaden Struble jumped right in. Logan Mailloux played 25 minutes with Mike Matheson the last game of the season. A couple of hiccups, but seamlessly kind of slid into that whole lineup there. And that is what you want from this. People ask me, what do you think of JF Houle? And I was like, I don't agree with all the different ways that he sometimes handles his lineup. I don't. But I also look at what he's been able to do, and Joel Bouchard before him, for getting a lot of these guys ready for the next level. Raphael Harvey-Pinard was one of Joel Bouchard's go-to guys, ended up being a very quality NHL player. Maybe a little tough this year, but I think he's primed for a bounce back. Michael Pizzetto went from an AHL fourth liner to an NHL fourth liner, everyday fourth liner, inside of a year. That's growth. Jaden Struble up to the NHL, hasn't left since then. Justin Barron at the NHL level, when he got called back up, looked so much better than I had expected from what I saw in his AHL time. Arbor Jacki went down, played about a month there, came back, and seemingly kind of got the message about how to be a more efficient defenseman and looked very strong there. Obviously, like I said, Logan Mailloux got called up. Not something I expected to see this year, and looked decent in that role. And now you're going to see, can this next generation of young guys coming in, Machar, potentially Owen Beck, Oliver Kapanen, Adam Engstrom, David Reinbacher, maybe Lane Hudson. I doubt it, but I have to say it anyways. Luke Tuck, Florian Jacki. Can they get more to Riley Kidney and Sean Farrell? And I think they can. I'm just curious what they do now, because JF Houle was not a Hughes and Gorton hire. John Cedric was there, which I assume he had some input into that, and they will go with his input. Are they extending him, or are they going to go in another direction? If they go in another direction, Benoit Gros is very high at the top of my list. An absolutely maddening Syracuse coach to play against, but a very smart hockey mind that I think would be up there. I look at this season for the Rocket not as a failure. It is very disappointing. Don't get me wrong. An extremely disappointing end to this season. Failure, no. I think it has laid a really strong foundation for this group to build on next year and take it to that next level. There's no reason why next year they can't be a team competing for this division title. If they didn't have that horrid start this year, and I know ifs and nuts, etc., they're a playoff team. They win 2 or 3 of those games, they're probably comfortably in a playoff spot. But sometimes that's just how it all works out. That's also going to wrap up our show today, everyone. I want to thank you so much for tuning in. As always, Laura will be at the back half of this week, so you are stuck with me right now. You can follow me on Twitter at Scott Matla. You can find Locked On Canadiens wherever you get your daily podcast, Google, Apple, Spotify, or right here on YouTube.com. Follow us on Twitter at LO_Canadiens. Plenty of draft stuff, prospect stuff coming up. So much news to start sharing with y'all soon. But for now, we're going to see you all next time.